The Spengler join forces with the original Ghostbusters in New York City to fight a ghostly enemy unleashed by an old artifact. Together, they must stop a vengeful demigod from bringing about a never-ending ice age and save the world. In year 1904, the New York Fire Department arrives at the Manhattan Adventurers Society to investigate a room that was releasing a lot of smoke. However, the smoke is drawn back in when the firemen show up. One of the men touches the door, and his hand begins to freeze, forcing his partners to pull him away. The firefighters then break down the door, and are astonished to discover dozens of frozen corpses and ice everywhere, as an unknown language plays from a phonograph. Among the ice spikes, a mystery armored person wields an orb harboring an ancient evil. When the firefighters attempt to seize it, the sphere cracks open, shattering all of the bodies. A pair of evil eyes shine inside the orb. In the present, Callie, her boyfriend Gary, and their children Phoebe and Trevor have relocated from Somerville to New York to become full-time Ghostbusters. Callie is the daughter of one of the first Ghostbusters, thus, it's become a family business. A scary ghost has escaped from the sewer and is spreading havoc throughout Manhattan, so the new squad begins after it in the car as it collides with other vehicles and manhole covers. A special seat is brought out so Phoebe may fire the proton blaster at the ghost. However, the driving causes her to miss a number of shots, causing damage to numerous buildings. When they get close enough, Trevor deploys a remote-controlled trap, but this is insufficient to capture the ghost, so a drone trap is deployed next. Callie successfully captures the ghost by guiding the drone towards it. Gary becomes distracted while celebrating with his family, causing him to lose control of the car and collide with a rack of city bicycles. People on the street record everything on their phones, and the team soon appears on the news. The damage they've done is seen negatively, so Mayor Peck summons the team to his office to chastise them for what they've done to the city and for bringing along Phoebe, who is still a minor. Afterward, the team returns to headquarters, which is the same office where the old Ghostbusters worked. Callie and Gary, remembering the mayor's threats, decide Phoebe should live a normal life and kick her out of the team. Phoebe does not take it well, but her complaints are ignored. Then Gary and Callie place the ghost in their containment unit, which requires more effort than usual, but they have no idea why. Thankfully, the light turns green, indicating that the ghost has been successfully contained. Meanwhile, Ray from the original Ghostbusters Demon podcast has a web show. They use an horoscope to measure the spiritual energy of everyday objects, in an attempt to find a connection to the afterlife. A woman brings a watch from her late husband, but Ray does not get any readings, and podcast simply smashes it with a hammer. When Phoebe returns, she discovers that their shop is infested with marshmallow men, which are small creatures that run around his room. She thinks they're cute, but the podcast smashes one down and explains that they're a plague. Suddenly, Nadim enters the shop, and the sight of his box sends the marshmallow man running to hide in fear. The box contains a collection of family antiques that Nadim wishes to sell, and Ray is immediately drawn to the orb after noticing the glyphs on it. He uses the horoscope on it, but the energy emitted by the orb causes a surge, breaking the device and triggering a brief earthquake. A frozen energy can be seen moving through the street before colliding with the wall in the ghost container. Ray buys the orb right away, and Nadim flees with the money, noting that the flame on a food cart outside has suddenly grown larger than usual for no apparent reason. At the Ghostbusters headquarters, Gary notices the damage on the wall and calls Janine, the previous team's secretary, who promises to send an expert to investigate. Trevor notices some green slime leaking through the roof and goes into the attic to investigate. He finds a pile of empty food packaging that moves as something naps underneath, so he takes a closer look and is surprised to see Slimer, who jumps out, flies through Trevor, and escapes through the wall. Later, the team receives a ghost alert and departs on a mission, but they refuse to accompany Phoebe. She ends up going to the park to play chess by herself, but the pieces begin to move on their own. Melody, a ghost, appears, and her shape is flamey because she died in a fire. While they play, Melody admits she has little chance of crossing over, because she has unfinished business. The following day, parabiologist Lars arrives to inspect the damaged wall, and when the unit shakes, they confirm the ghosts are attempting to escape. Former Ghostbuster Winston brings the original design of the containment unit, created by Callie's late father. After 40 years of collecting spiritual waste, they have come to the conclusion that the unit is running out of space. Winston also informs them that the explosion that caused the earthquake created a rift that could potentially serve as a gateway to the other side. Because this building is obviously not going to last long, Winston takes the team to a secret lab where he keeps the Paranormal Research Center. All kinds of scientists gather here to investigate supernatural phenomena. Trevor gets to reunite with his friend Lucky, who also works there. When Ray discovers an item containing supernatural energy, he sends it to the lab, where Lars places it in a machine that separates the ghost from the object. Using the original design as a guide, they've also built a larger container unit, so they'll need to start moving the ghost from headquarters by bringing traps. Not all of the ghosts are kept in the unit, some are housed in separate cells for further investigation. Phoebe is startled by a skull, while Gary and Callie take a step back when a ghost pukes on the glass. There's also a possessor who enjoys jumping between devices. Later in the evening, the team receives another mission and departs without Phoebe. At that point, a second emergency call comes in, so Phoebe and Podcast go to handle it behind the adults' backs. They make it to a restaurant and learn that the ghost is Melody, so Phoebe does not dare shoot. Melody quickly flees, and Phoebe reacts too late, causing the windows to shatter. Lars and Lucky are currently working with Ray's objects in the lab. When it is the orb's turn, all of the ghosts in the cells become very disturbed. The machine fails to remove the spirit, and the lab experiences a sudden power surge. Some cell windows break, and the ghosts begin to flee. But Lars restores the power, and everything returns to normal. Then he grabs the orb, only to find his hand freezing. Lars drops the orb just before losing his arm. Melody enters Phoebe's room a few moments later. Phoebe shows her around, and Melody comes close to touching the containment unit before stopping just in time. Melody also continues to play with some matches, which Phoebe explains is the object that is keeping her grounded in this world. The revelation that these matches were the catalyst for the fire that tragically took the lives of her family surfaces. Meanwhile, in the laboratory, the orb emits a powerful freezing wave that once again disrupts the city's power supply. The wave approaches Melody, who, though expressing a sense of urgency, appears uncertain about utilizing Phoebe in their strategy. The following day, Trevor sets up a trap in the attic, baiting it with junk food and praising it with a proton blaster. Just as Slimer emerges to take the bait, another seismic event shakes the city, thwarting Trevor's attempt to capture the ghost. The team rushes to the containment unit, only to discover a massive hole in the wall and frost all over the place. The team returns to the lab and discovers that the orb is also freezing. Lars grabs an orb with a tool and shows it to the Marshmallow Men, who are so drawn to it that they splash against the window. The orb appears to be capable of mind-controlling ghosts as well as freezing certain devices when it comes too close. Lucky, Trevor, and Lars visit Nadim, who shows them his grandmother's special room. There are many antiques there, including some strange horns and the armor from the beginning. Lars discovers that everything in the room is made of brass, which is capable of trapping ghosts. When the trio uses the oroscope on Nadim, a strong reaction occurs, so they bring him to the lab with them. After connecting Nadim to a machine, former Ghostbuster Peter begins asking strange questions. Suddenly, he throws a pen at Nadim, who becomes enraged and causes a nearby flame to grow. As the argument continues and Peter throws more pens, Nadim's anger grows, as does the flame, indicating that he has the ability to manipulate fire. Meanwhile, Podcast is reviewing the video. He shot at the lab and discovers a strange ancient language coming out of the orb. He, Phoebe, and Ray decide to consult with an expert before leaving on Ray's old bike. They go to the New York Public Library and speak with the scientist who translates the words in the video, while showing them a carving on an old book. Centuries ago, a power-hungry king sought assistance from a powerful entity known as Garaka, who had his own plans to bring about a new ice age. Nadim's ancestors were the Fire Masters, a group of people who use their abilities to imprison Garaka in the orb, and steal the horns that granted him power. If Garaka is freed, New York will suffer from the death chill, a cold caused by chilling fear that kills. The scientist also displays some wax cylinders containing old recordings, including one from the Manhattan Adventurers Society. That group used to enjoy stealing relics, and several years ago they attempted to open the orb, which killed them all. The group hears the recording and notices the same words in the video. Suddenly, the cylinder shakes and jumps out of the machine, landing in a trash bag, which causes chaos throughout the library. The team starts following it, and when Ray walks among the shelves, he is stopped by the same library ghost from the 1980s. The group follows the ghost outside and discovers it resting on a lion statue. Ray reaches for it, but the lion begins to move because the ghost has left the bag to take possession of the statue. As people flee in panic, Phoebe grabs a proton blaster from the bike and shoots the lion, causing it to explode. Moments later, Peck announces that he is disbanding the Ghostbusters, as he has wanted to do since the beginning. Phoebe tries to protest, but Peck says it's either this or prison. The team returns to headquarters in the evening and discovers that the police have taken all of their equipment. While Phoebe argues with her parents, Ray shows Nadim the damage to the containment room, and informs him that he is the next Fire Master, and must begin training to save the world. The first exercise is to transfer a flame from a lighter to a candle. The flame moves along with Nadim's hand, but it does not do much yet. Meanwhile, Phoebe returns to the park and meets up with Melody. The girls talk and bond, so Phoebe admits she wants to be a ghost, which gives her an idea. They go to the lab, where Phoebe enters the machine, and Melody activates it to temporarily separate her soul from her body. Melody apologizes and appears sad after the procedure is completed. It turns out she works for Garaka, who can only control ghosts rather than living beings. Because he requires a living person to open the orb, he can now command Phoebe's ghost to speak the words. The ghost is still connected to her body, so it repeats the words as well, and the orb begins to open as Melody explains that she had to do this because it was her only chance to see her family. The orb soon disintegrates, and the room becomes completely dark. Garaka appears and threatens to destroy the world, while his power forces Phoebe's ghost to return to her body. Lucky appears at that point and attempts to fire a proton blast at Garaka, but he quickly freezes and shatters the stream before disappearing. While the rest of the team arrives to free Phoebe, Garaka enters the shop in Nadim's building and freezes the clerk. Then he makes his way to Nadim's apartment, where he gets his horns. He instantly returns to his true form and all of his power after putting them on. Soon, a cloud appears over the city and begins to freeze the entire area, causing ice spikes to appear, destroy property, and kill people mercilessly. Both the old and new teams meet at headquarters to discuss ideas, and Nadim shows off his training. However, he can still only do the basics. Fortunately, Lars has some equipment in his van, so the team begins preparing to fight, while Lucky points out that their weapons will be insufficient, given what happened in the lab. Phoebe remembers that brass can trap ghosts and that the orb was made of it, so she begins melting some brass to strengthen her blaster. Trevor and Lucky on the roof notice a tricycle rolling on its own down the deserted street, so they assume it's the possessor ghost who escaped the lab and rushed back inside. As the storm outside worsens, the tricycle collides with the door, causing it to blow out of its hinges. A red light representing the possessor strikes the Ghostbusters sign, causing it to fall before going inside and taking possession of the car. The vehicle reverses, and everyone leaps out of the way just in time. Lars enters another room because he heard a noise, but one of the lab's little ghosts shoots goo at him. The red light quickly leaves the car, grabbing a paper plane before jumping into Lucky's proton pack. It raises the blaster and attempts to shoot Trevor, but Gary pushes him away, and Nadim uses his power to direct the blast out the window. Podcast smashes the pack with his hammer, and the ghost jumps out to take a pizza, only to be devoured by Slimer. At that moment, ice began to cover the headquarters building. Phoebe enters the unit room and finds Melody, who swears she didn't mean to hurt anyone and just wanted to see her family. Phoebe is furious, and she makes Melody realize that no one can help her move on. She must find it within herself. Garaka eventually arrives and blocks the front door with more ice spikes. As the building begins to shake and fall apart, the Ghostbusters fire all of their proton blasters at once, but Garaka freezes them all in seconds. Suddenly, Nadim appears in the Fire Master armor, and attempts to summon a flame with a lighter, but it does not work because he has used up all of the fluid in training. Garaka grabs the lighter, and destroys it before unleashing a blast that creates a chasm on the floor, and traps everyone in more ice spikes. Then Garaka says an incantation to free all of the ghosts from the unit, resulting in a massive energy blast shooting into the sky. All of the ghosts from the unit have escaped and are terrorizing the city, but Phoebe can no longer see Melody. She rushes upstairs and fires her blaster at Garaka, who is unable to freeze the reinforced energy and instead shoots frost at Phoebe. The girl freezes instantly, and Garaka attempts to extract her soul, but Melody reappears and lights her final match. Now Nadim can launch a fireball at Garaka, and the intense heat melts the ice in the room, freeing everyone. Phoebe shoots her blaster again and struggles to stand still with so much power in her hands, so her family assists her in holding it. While the reinforced blast and Nadim's fireball combine to defeat Garaka, Podcast rushes to the car and deploys the drone trap. However, the Marshmallow Men have also escaped the lab and interfered with him, causing him to lose control of the trap and allowing Garaka to knock it down. The older Ghostbusters notice that since Garaka released, all of the Ghost's containment unit is now empty. They rush to the basement to activate it, and thanks to everyone's cooperation, Garaka is dragged into the unit, and the light turns green, confirming that the bad guy has been successfully sealed. Melody afterwards gives Phoebe her matchbox and bids her farewell before departing. When the team arrives, they find that all of the ice has melted. Perk appears to try to scold them again, but all of the locals are cheering, and Perk is forced to play along, allowing the Ghostbusters to function for the time being. All of the ghosts that Garaka released are now loose in the city, so the team returns to action to begin cleaning. Phoebe refers to Gary as Dad for the first time as they leave. Sometime later, when a truck driver comes to a gas station, the Marshmallow Men take advantage of the opportunity to steal his vehicle. The story concludes here. Thanks for watching. Take care, and bye now.